All right. So, you know what's the funny thing about it? My mic was on mute nearly the entire time. I gotta stop doing that every single time I start these episodes. But hey, y'all, what's up? This KK's interlude. We're blessed and highly favored here, and today we're back on the Shy with Bold Faith podcast. So, so as of recently, geez, I went through an influx of things. Um, as of recently, within the span of like a year, but I'm pressing my way through it. Also, I'm really sorry for the inconsistencies and everything. But but golly gee, uh today we're gonna be talking about discernment, as the name of the episode is a call for better understanding. So the reason why, or the call of understanding. So the reason why I named it that is because of the fact that discernment or just understanding is just like a phone call. Like let's just say, like prime example, you take a test, you take your ACT or whatever, and typically when you take your ACT, you have to wait anywhere from like 4 weeks to 8 weeks to get your test results. Back when like I was younger, and it's like as you're waiting and as you're wondering, like, okay, I, you know, it's like I took the test, I did what I needed to do. Now I gotta wait and see what happens, right? So discernment is kind of like that. It's like you're sitting there, you're wondering. It's like, okay, I feel really weird about this person, right? And then it's like as you're sitting and you're praying, you're just waiting for some type of answer where it's like, okay, this is the reason why I feel so weirdly about said person. Like, if that even makes any sense. But the reason why, like, I guess that hits home for me per se, is I feel like discernment has always been like, it's always been a wake up call. Like, for example, like when you're younger and you hang around specific people, everything's cool, peachy keen, and nobody really thinks about it because, you're sitting there thinking you're going to be friends with these people forever. And the next thing you know, you get older and discernment kicks in, and you sit and you realize, like, oh, I need to wake up. Like, yeah, I love these people to death, but they're leading me down questionable pathways, right? So that's basically what I mean by that. And the whole backstory was I had no idea what this episode was gonna be at all. I was just like, God, I got a question. Um, which one of this, like, what should I talk about next? Like, I'm a little clueless. And it was quiet for a while. And then I randomly, I was just chilling. I just randomly heard discernment. And I'm just like, if that's what you're wanting me to do, like, I'm not trying to make you prove yourself or nothing, because that's weird. But it's just like, where's the scriptures that you want me to use, or just as like some kind of proof? Because it does say, in First John 4:1 to test every spirit, because you can't listen to everything and anything that just say something to you. And I received like four scriptures. Geez Louise. It was Ecclesiastes 10:12, Ephesians 6:18, Mark chapter 4 verses 23 through 32, and James chapter 1 verses 5 through 10. I'm just like, okay, okay, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it. All right, all right, all right. Right? All right. So what exactly is discernment? Now, I'm not even gonna hold you. I'm not on not necessarily on social media, but I'm not necessarily on Facebook as much as I used to be. And whenever I get on Facebook, people be yapping up a storm, and they just constantly talk about, like, oh my gosh, you can't trust the soul. Everybody's mean and do, right? And I keep seeing all of these posts and people yapping about 50-50 and all types of stuff. And one of the ones that I see consistently is, having discernment in specific situations, and people saying, I have discernment in specific situations because I am the chosen, or whatever the case may be, right? So discernment. So I pretty much look. I always like to start this off with Merriam-Webster definitions. I have no clue why. I just like to kind of break specific things down per se. So okay. So discernment, according to Merriam-Webster, is an act of perceiving or discerning something, right? And wisdom, and I wanted to add wisdom because a lot of people, including me at one point, has mixed up discernment and wisdom, as they're very similar. And sometimes they can mean the same thing, but it really depends on the context. So, wisdom is accumulated philosophical or scientific learning or just informational intelligence, right? So, in this instance, the huge difference between wisdom and discernment, and I mean wisdom as like information or intelligence that you're like acquiring, right? Wisdom is the tool or the information acquired, while discernment is how you will use said tool. So, like, prime example. So, you could be chilling and you have a weird feeling about said person, right? You're just like, I don't know what it is. I don't really feel too hot about this person, right? And meanwhile, every time you go around this person, your stomach bubbling, like you got the bubble guts and everything, right? So then something happens and it's exposed that this person was like a terrible person. So in that instance, the wisdom that you're like acquiring or receiving or finding out in that instance, that's the reason why that's one of the reasons why you felt so oddly about said person. That would be deemed, the information or wisdom about said person, right? But the discernment is pretty much saying, okay, before I knew this information, I already had a weird feeling about this person. So because of the fact that I feel weird about this person, and now I know, said things about said person, I'm gonna use my better judgment and pray to God about how I'm gonna go about interacting with this person, whether I'm no longer around them or whether I'm having to keep a distance, you know, from said person. So something I heard to jot down, you know, it kind of made me go, right? So I had I had wrote it here and I had made sure like to type it as well so I could like remember it. So it says it's more than just academia. It is the seeking of godly wisdom and understanding while observing what you see, even within your environment as well. This is not from a physical way, but a spiritual one as well. To understand discernment, you must inquire about the Holy Spirit, as this is the key to fully understanding why you felt oddly about specific things or people. Without the Holy Spirit, you won't understand anything. You'll pass it off as delusion when it's a warning. And I was just like, I'm like, you ate that up, period. I was like, okay, God, you ate that up, right? So I'm gonna give an example. I'm gonna give an example because at this point I got plenty of examples. So there's this dream that I had. So after I left this design gig that I had, um, actually no, this was around the time that I got finished with said design gig, and I had this really weird dream, and I talked about it in the second part of the Lost in Translation series, with the whole snake dream that I had. And when I had told my mom about it, she pretty much wanted me to pass it off as like, oh, it doesn't mean anything, just let it go, right? And then I pretty much talked to like my stepdad about it, and he basically said, yeah, it definitely means something. So then over time, as the days, weeks, months passes by, I then realized, okay, this is God warning me that there is an adversary, right? And then it was another time when I always had like a really weird feeling about a specific like person at this church that I used to go to, right? And it was like one day I was asked to help them. I was just like, okay, sure, why not? I mean, what's the big deal, right? The whole time, like, I was just like, I don't understand why I feel so disconnected or like odd about this person. I can't put my finger on it, but something feels really weird, right? And meanwhile, the whole time I'm helping them, I'm having dreams about this person harming me. Like at one point, one of the dreams I had, this person was in my dream, literally causing me to flip my car and injure myself. And another time, like it was a whole, like it was egregious. It was crazy. And throughout all of these dreams, God was trying to tell me these same things, these same exact things, to have discernment and to pray. Because while there's nothing wrong with helping people, you have to really use discernment about who you help, because there are definitely people that the enemy will use that will cause you to go into delay, that literally will, they'll go out of your way or out of their way to literally like to keep you is like broken and like at the bottom as possible, long story short, right? So something that I found like really interesting about just like discernment as a whole is it's not necessarily just you acquiring something and then that's it. But discernment is really just coming to the realization that you really have to step out on faith and you have to trust in God whenever He tells you or gives you a feeling in your body that something is wrong. Like a lot of people will call the discernment, they'll call it intuition when the holy the whole time is the Holy Spirit that's warning them about said situation or warning them about said person. Because there's plenty of times where in the past I'll hang with people and it would be late at night. And whenever I'm hanging with these people, I mean, my stomach's hurting. I feel lightheaded. I'm about to throw up and everything, right? And the moment I leave this person and I'm just by myself, all that goes away. That literally goes away. Like it was another time where I was spending time with my significant other. I was spending time with my boyfriend. And it was the day of my birthday. And geez, it's that whole day was just nuts. So long story short, I had heard to leave the house to pretty much leave and go home like around 10, no later than 10. And I'm just like, okay, sure. So I leave around 10 and I make sure not to go, up the highway because typically I don't go up the highway anyways because the traffic makes me nervous, right? So I go the opposite way, right? Tell me why an hour after I left, it was a whole car accident that happened like all the way up the street. Like not even up the street, just like literally like it's not funny. It's just the timing of it was just wild. Cause at one point I was just like, it wouldn't hurt to grab something to eat or whatever. And I'm just like, no, that doesn't really make any sense because I kind of just ate. I just had like a whole like slice of strawberry shortcake, so it wouldn't make any sense to get anything else to eat after you literally kind of just ate, right? So I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go up the highway. I'm just gonna go the opposite way. If I would have went up the highway and I would have left like later than what I would have, there's no telling if that would have possibly been something even crazier that happened, right? So that intuition or that feeling that you feel is the Holy Spirit warning you or giving you discernment about a specific situation. Because there's no telling what could happen. Like you could stay later than you intended or something crazy could happen. Or you could trust somebody and just ignore, the weird feeling that you have around that person, and that person is a flat out weirdo, right? So I'm gonna give some biblical examples, of just discernment, right? So first things first, we're gonna start it off with Solomon. I technically brought up both of these examples before in like past episodes, but here we are again. So, some examples for Solomon is before he even really kicked everything off in First Kings chapter 3, I believe. Did I say chapter or verse? My bad. Chapter 3. Solomon is like, okay, I know I'm the king or whatever, but I'm a little confused. And God, I'm not gonna hold you. I really need you. I really wish to have more wisdom, you know, to have more discernment about what to do in order to be a better king and a better person as a whole, right? And God grants him that. And because then at one point later on, in verses 16 through 28, you have these two sex workers or these two women that were arguing about a baby because sadly one of the women accidentally slept on their kid and suffocated them to death, sadly. So both of the women are arguing, is like, this is my baby. This is my baby. No, this is mine. Right? And Solomon was like, okay, bet. We finna check this out. We're gonna split this baby. Now we really gonna see whose it is. But the crazy thing about it was that Solomon wasn't actually going to split the child. He was doing that as a way for the real parent to reveal themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, no parent, no like good parent, mind you, would want anything to happen to their child. So the person, I'm gonna call them woman A and woman B. So woman A wanted the baby to be split, like, yeah, split the baby. And woman B was like, no, you know what? It's fine, it's her baby, right? The the actual mother of the child was woman B, right? And woman A was like, yeah, split the baby. So within that situation, Solomon not only figured out whose child it is, but that shocked everybody. They was like, oh, okay. Like, okay, Solomon, how'd you think of that? That's crazy. That was wise. Or whatever, right? So another example, so the second example is Jesus, right? So at one point in time, I'm just give an example because there's plenty of different examples of Jesus using discernment and really just wisdom, while he's fulfilling his father's will, fulfilling the will of God for his life, right? So this is around the time that Jesus is fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, and Satan is like, hey, I can give you whatever you want if you just turn the stone to bread, right? And Jesus already knew what it was and was like, I'm about my father's business. I don't care what you're talking about. And then on top of that, what was just as equally foolish is like, why are you promising to give somebody blessings and they're the son of God? Like, what? I'm sorry, it tickles me bad. But you can find that in Matthew chapter 4 if you like want to read it. And then the second thing, well, not second, the third example is Peter versus Ananias and Sapphira. So around this time, everybody is everybody's chilling. Everybody's trying to figure out, okay, what are ways that we can contribute to the church, right? So everybody's like, okay, tithes and offering is one. So Ananias and Sapphira essentially lied, about their money. They lied about the amount of money that they gave to the church, let alone giving the money, right? So Peter asked them and was like, okay, did you or did you not give the church money? Did you give them all of the money, as a matter of fact? And Ananias and Sapphira was like, yes, I gave them all the money. We gave them all the monies, right? And Peter, like God gave Peter discernment to where Peter knew that Ananias and Sapphira were lying. And then shortly after that, the folks got. They was struck where they stood. I said, "Ooh," I'm like, that's crazy. But it's like at the end of the day, why are you lying? It's it's like, why are you lying about that? Just be honest, right? So it's like when it comes to discernment just as a whole, it is extremely important because really discernment will save your life in a lot more ways than you believe, than you think even, right? And I feel like the devil wants people to not use discernment or to not have, quote unquote intuition. Because if you don't have any type of quote unquote intuition or discernment about the situations that you're in or that you find other people in or whatever the case may be, depending on the situation as a whole, it could literally end up in your cause of death. It can literally be your cause of death if you do not discern the situation well. And not only that, but it's also in my personal opinion, because whenever I talk about this kind of stuff, um, I'm gonna say I shrug my shoulders per se, but I'm sort of nitpicky about what I say because I don't know, it's just something I notice like heavy nowadays in the body of Christ, and it's not everybody, it's like a good chunk of people. Is whenever people are willing to like say a specific thing and it's true and it's needed and it needs to be said for the sake of edifying and really just building each other up, people don't want to hear it because it's the truth and it hurts, right? I feel like in a lot of ways, people want you to throw discernment to the window, especially when it comes to understanding and knowing scripture for yourself. Like, in a way, it's like they follow their pastors more than follow God. When in reality, just like with prophets in general, the pastor is also a vessel that God uses in order to bring you a word. It's not to say that he can't bring you a word himself. God can absolutely do whatever he wants. However, the pastor also is bringing you that word that God is trying to tell you. Because sometimes, depending on that person's, upbringing or whatever the case may be, sometimes a lot of people doubt themselves whenever God tells them something. And it's like, oh, I don't think God said that. Or maybe it's the devil that's saying that and trying to confuse me or whatever the case may be. And all it takes is, your pastor saying the specific thing in church for it to be like a confirmation, you know, of what he's trying to tell you. So when you have a lack of discernment, it leads you into very murky territory. And that's why you have so many people that end up into these cults, like per se. Because it gets to a point. Hello, Robin. It's okay. Yeah, but it's like that's why you have a good chunk of people that end up in these cults, and especially like religious cults, even. Because I'll never forget when I was younger, and I was always like really curious about like why did people, how did they end up in these cults? What did these cult leaders say to these people to get them to be like, oh, yeah, this is it. Yeah, they're telling the truth. Period. Like, what have these people said to get them sucked in like this, right? Because one of the greatest examples that I remember when I was younger was I was watching this VH1 documentary or something. I have no idea what channel it was on. It might have been on VH1. I'm not sure, but it was talking about Jonestown and Jim Jones and that whole situation, and it made me mad because it was just like everything about it just made me angry. because of the fact that it's like this man really went and created this cult of people and preached a distorted and skewed version of Christianity to the point of where he had the people in the palm of his hands. And these people literally drank Kool-Aid that caused their death. And it's insane because it was just insane to me, just like reading up on it and just watching documentaries about it and just like seeing, like, not even just from a religious standpoint, just seeing all of these people um getting sucked into these cults. Like, it was one cult, the Eternal Atake cult or something like that. I'm not even sure. But it's just sad because at one point, even even Jesus had to remind people in Matthew chapter 7 verses 13 through 20 that you'll know them by their fruit. You'll know them by their fruit. Like, if they don't have the fruits of the spirit, and if what they're saying is not biblical, what they're saying really should not be taken seriously or listened to at all. But sadly, because of the world that we live in today, a lot of people focus more on theatrics and whether or not it sounds good, more than using discernment or praying for discernment, to where they question the validity of what this person is saying. And it's like, in a way, um, the enemy uses the lack of discernment to not cause people to critically think about what is being said or done. Because, in my opinion and in my perspective, I feel like God, it's just something I noticed. It's just something I noticed. It's just something I noticed. Um, God values people that are willing to critically think and really pay attention to you know, what is being said. Because obedience is better than sacrifice. That's 100% true. At the same time, if you have a leader or a person that's an authority over you, yeah, it's important to obey this person. At the same time, you have to know and understand what they're saying. You can't just blindly follow people and not understand what they're saying. Because that's how all of these people ended up in these cults, to where they blindly follow these people, and lo and behold, they're out here getting closer and closer to death and don't even realize it. Like, you had a whole, I think the Eternal Take people went as far as to try to say that the only way they could, they literally felt that death was the only way to, like, a premature death, or like suicide was like the way to get to heaven. And I'm like, where in the Bible does it say that at all? Right? And it's just crazy. And it's one of the main reasons why Paul was constantly echoing, especially in the Pauline epistles or just the majority of the New Testament. Paul and so many people, and even in the Old Testament, all of the prophets and people that God used as a vessel was constantly telling people, hey, we need to really put on our thinking caps and we need to use discernment about the things of God. Because just like back then in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, there were people that was getting in everybody's faces and was telling them all types of stuff, and depended on people not having discernment to be able to get away with the things that they were saying and doing. And that was not right at all whatsoever. Right? And I think it was First Corinthians 15 verses. Hold on. As a matter of fact, let me grab my BIBLE. I did not have to laugh like that. That was the crazy part. Here's an ASMR, y'all. Wait. Okay, hold on, hold on. It was First Corinthians chapter. Okay, it was First Corinthians chapter 15, verses 33. Cause I had went over that in Bible study with my church members, and literally it said evil communication corrupt good manner. Like, you have to be mindful of who you're around, who you listen to, and so on, because you have people that you'll be surprised at who the devil will assign to your life to try to steer you off course. Like 100%. Like, you can't let people say all types of stuff in your ear and you just accept them to be like, yeah, like, haha, Sandra said this specific thing, so guess what? I'm gonna follow what Sandra said. Meanwhile, the devil uses Sandra to try to get you to do something you ain't supposed to do, and that thing is gonna put you near death before you know it. So it's like at the end of the day, just having discernment, just having an understanding is just so important when it comes to just being not just being a human being, but just being a Christian as a whole. And then on top of that, discernment isn't just about, ooh, this person's doing this, that, and the third. I feel weird about them. Discernment is also having the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and being honest and being willing to accept the fact that you also got something wrong with you too, whenever you do have something wrong with you. Because there's so many different times, and so many different occasions where God has constantly held people accountable for certain things. And sometimes some people try to be a little delulu about it. Because it's been so many times where God called the Israelites out on stuff and is like, hey, y'all need to change because what y'all got going on is not it. And the Israelites were like, we don't know what you're talking about. We're going to continue doing whatever we want to do. And every single time it got them cooked. It got them cooked bad. Like, it was at one point where Jeremiah had to pray in Lamentations. Like, he was distraught. And the people were coming at him crazy as if it was Jeremiah's fault. But the whole time it was their own fault. So discernment, like true discernment and humility, is really getting to a point of where you're not ashamed or afraid to discern your own character and heart posture as well. Because sometimes before we come at other people, sometimes we got to be able to discern what's going on within us as well. We have to lean on God and really just get to a point of where we're willing to sit down and peel back the layers and ask God to come into our lives and to work on the things that's wrong with us, right? Like, discernment ain't just for it ain't just for us to look at other people and point them out. Discernment is also for us to look at ourselves and to have our minds and hearts be renewed, just like it says in Romans 12 too, right? So that's another thing I don't know, I think that's the one thing I think is beautiful about discernment is that it's not just for other people, it's for us too. Just like a lot of people will say, forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for you, and that's 100% true. That statement doesn't just apply to forgiveness, it also applies to discernment as well. Because at the end of the day, we have to be able, ooh, not the alarm cut off. No, but like, we have to get to a point of where just like we're willing to point and do this and do this and do that, we have to have the ability to open ourselves up like a book, and have God look at us and be like, hey, here I am. What exactly is wrong with me? What are I'm struggling with this thing, but I don't know what exactly it is. And then God will come in and will literally break it down for you word for word, bar for bar, so that He'll give you the tools and the understanding to know how to handle and how to go about that situation, or how to use that discernment to, you know, go about that specific problem that you're having. He'll give you the tools for how to act and how to behave and how to go about things, right? Because at times, as well, I feel like whenever we hear the word discernment, sometimes I feel like people get so excited about being like, look, guys, discernment. I can discern everybody's character. It's like, don't play with me or whatever, right? People get excited and have that type of behavior. But when it comes to God taking a mirror and pointing it at you, a good chunk of people don't want to do that because it requires them to be honest about the type of person that they are. It requires them to sit down and really get to a point where it's like, God, I'm not perfect. I'm wounded, I'm hurt, I'm broken, and I need you. And a good chunk of people don't want to do that because it requires them to be vulnerable. And sometimes when it comes to discernment, I know, like for me especially, the reason why I find discernment so beautiful is because it requires you to be vulnerable and really ask yourself, like, okay, I have a weird feeling about this person. Is the weird feeling that I have about this person, is it God warning me? Or is it because said person did something to me, you know, for example, like they didn't do anything wrong, they just held you accountable for a certain thing and you didn't like it. And you felt offended and you said, I don't like that person, right? Discernment requires a certain amount of vulnerability. You have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to talk to God and be like, hey, um, I feel a little weird about this person. You know, why do I feel weird about this person? Or how do I go about this situation? I don't know everything, but I trust you enough to understand that in the midst of this situation, you're going to give me the tools and the understanding to how to go about this, how to go about this situation. Because, like, for example, in the situation of Joseph, Joseph went through a influx of stuff. Like, one of the people that I can kind of relate to and that I really just, I don't know what it is. I love just reading about them and just, I think about them there, here and there. It's two people, right? Um, Gideon, who I love Gideon and Moses, but Joseph's him. He's him for real. And Joseph could have went about the situations that he experienced in a completely different way, right? Like Joseph literally experienced almost being SA'd, sadly. Joseph could have crashed clean out and would have gotten in trouble. But it was literally God really just in the midst of that situation, just being there and comforting him and just helping Joseph to use discernment enough to be like, okay, yeah, this situation absolutely sucks, but I'm not going to worry about it any further because God has something better for me ahead. So even though I see the heart of this person, I see what type of person they are, I see, what they're about, and I experienced so much stuff with this person that I should have never experienced in the first place. God has the ability to let me know in that situation that, hey, you don't got to pop off, you don't got to go crazy and get yourself in trouble. Just trust me and I got you, right? Like, I'll never leave you or forsake you. I'm close to the brokenhearted and those that feel crushed. Psalms 34:18, right? So it's like, for me, I think the reason why discernment feels, I don't know, discernment feels beautiful to me is because it requires you to have a bit of vulnerability, to where you have to prepare for anything and everything. Whether it's you that has to go through a change, or whether it's God revealing to you the heart of that person, and you have to be prepared enough to where it's like, you know what, I'm a little scared. I'm a little scared. I really like that person, or I'm really scared. This is supposed to be somebody that I love. This is supposed to be someone I'm close with. And, spiritually, this person is trying to hurt me. I don't know what to do. I'm scared. It requires you to be vulnerable enough to hold God's hand and let Him guide you through it, right? So, geez. So, I feel like for me, discernment really does, geez, I don't know. For me, discernment has always felt like a mental, really just a mental, emotional, and spiritual strength that I feel like everybody should have, right? So, geez. So it's like, at the end of the day, I feel like we all got to pray for, to have discernment. And as we have discernment, as we have the ability, or God gives us the ability to discern a specific situation or how to go about interactions with specific people, I think we should be willing to be vulnerable enough to really just like vent to God and just let him know that the situation is a little crazy, but give us the strength and ability, and give us, order our steps in that situation, right? Because if our steps aren't ordered and we're just walking all over the place and we're discombobulated, it ain't really gonna do no good. So it's like, in that situation, we really have to ask Him to order our steps. And I'm thinking about that song right now. Nah, but like, we really do have to take a step back and be like, okay, I don't know what to do about this situation, but I trust you in all things. And I'm going to let you drive the car, and I'm going to hold, you know, all I ask is that you please hold my hand and give me the tools and give me the ability to be able to withstand this storm, right? So, with that being said, this is episode 11. I'm sorry, y'all. I have a tendency to giggle a lot. So I don't know, it's like, um when it comes to having these talks, I take it as seriously as I do because it is very serious. Like, in general, I can be a very goofy person, as you see in the gameplays and stuff. But it's like, when it comes to, having these discussions and so on, I take it very seriously, even if I do tell, a few little jokey jokes, because it's just like Paul said, when it comes to having discernment or just anything in general. Like, when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to the Bible, intentionality is everything. It's important to be honest about what you're saying and take it serious. Because if we're being completely and totally honest, there's a lot of people that will get in front of the pulpit and will just say a whole lot of nothing. Like, them being dishonest and even not going to God about what they're telling people can cause other people to go down a slippery slope, and will cause them to believe in a falsified version of the gospel. Because I think I'm at the point now of where I really started to like think about a lot of stuff. Like, when I came up to Christ, the reason why I take it as seriously as I do is because of the fact that I really wanted to understand the Bible for myself. I wanted to hear God for myself. And it caused me to realize that it's a lot of people out here that I don't think they have or practice discernment like that. I think they just go off of what people have told them and never bother to question it. Which is why I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like God rocks with critical thinkers. Not critical thinkers that have a sense of pride and think that they know everything, but like critical thinkers in the sense of they listen to what people are saying, but before they go along with it, they ask themselves, is this something that God would say? Is this something that God would approve of? Is this something that's biblically backed? Or so on, right? And it's like it kind of goes back into like the title of it, which is like the call of understanding, because I feel like, in my personal opinion or perspective, um, in order to be called or genuinely used by God, I feel like we all have to have an understanding of what it is that we're being called to do, or to have discernment to understand, to fully understand what we're getting ourselves into. Because just like with all the prophets in the Bible, it's not like they're just like, oh, God told me I have to do this thing. We're gonna go on a magical joyride to like Narnia or something. Like, no, they had the idea that, okay, it's gonna be something crazy. While I don't know what it is, I'm gonna trust God anyways, no matter how hard it is. And Paul, Elijah, Joseph, Moses, so many people in the Bible had to have discernment, within them taking on the call that God has for their lives. So for me, I feel like discernment requires you to be vulnerable enough to accept the reality that you got to accept the truth for what it is. You have to accept the truth and you have to move accordingly. So it's just like intentionality is just everything. That's why I take it as seriously, as I do. But aside from that, this is episode 11. Aside from that, I'll see you guys I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Um, yeah, but if there's any thoughts or if there's anything you want to share, you can always just leave it in the comment section or, just like DM me anything you have a question about, things of that nature. But aside from that, like I said, I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. All right, bye, guys.